Good evening from inside the High Court here in Pretoria. This is Courtroom GD, where the trial of Oscar Pistorius is going on. He's on trial, of course, for the premeditated murder of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day last year. And this is where it all takes place, this old wood-panelled courthouse. The Pistorius family sit just a couple of rows down here. I'm in the press benches here. Oscar Pistorius himself sits right at the front by the television screen, and his lawyers right in front of him, and the prosecution lawyers to that side. And behind that, Judge Tokile Masipa, who is ruling and presiding over this courtroom, hearing everything today. And one of the interesting things she heard today, and for the first time we were able to see one of the witnesses actually giving evidence in front of the camera. Kevin Lorena is a professional boxer. He's a good friend of Oscar Pistorius, and he testified that the Olympic athlete had accidentally fired a gun in a packed Johannesburg restaurant last year and then asked a friend to take the blame. Pistorius is, of course, on trial for murder, and firearms come in very strongly in this case. There are at least 3 firearms charges he faces, as well as murder. Paul Harrison has the story of the day.
In marked contrast to the chaotic arrival scenes of yesterday, it seemed by day 3 of the Oscar Pistorius trial, everyone, the media, the defendant and his family, have found a routine that will be repeated for weeks to come. Inside court, a break with routine. After 2 days of evidence surrounding the shooting of girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, testimonies about the moment Pistorius fired a gun in a public place just weeks earlier. It happened here at Tasha's restaurant in Johannesburg. One of those present, boxer Kevin Lorena, nicknamed the KO Kid. The first witness happy to give evidence on camera during this trial. He told the court he'd sought the help of a man he called an athletics icon.
I spoke to him to help me with my career because obviously he's an icon and a legend in sport and athletics. You know, for me as a young sportsman to get help from a guy like him was very important. So I was rubbing shoulders with him, and he was going to help me with a diet and a little bit of running.
You were there with a group?
Yes, there was 4 of us.
Who were you?
I was sitting there with Mr. Pistorius, myself, Darren Fresco, and a guy called Martin Rooney, another runner.
One of the 4, Darren Fresco, was carrying a gun. Pistorius was keen to take a look. He was interested in buying a similar one.
Darren Fresco passed his gun under the table to Oscar. From what I remember correctly, Darren said, "I'm 1 up." There's a bullet in the chain. I'm 1 up. I then believe Oscar removed that bullet.
You saw the gun being passed under the table?
Well, the movements, the actions. I didn't see the gun.
Okay. And you heard what Mr. Fresco said?
I'm 1 up, yes.
1 up. What do you understand by 1 up?
That there's 1 loaded into the chamber.
Okay.
That people who carry guns, I suppose, carry 1 up.
What happened next?
Shot went off. A shot went off in the restaurant, and then there was just complete silence. Once the shot went off, I looked down, I was in shock, and I looked down on the floor, and exactly where my foot was stationary, there was like a hole in the floor.
You saw the hole in the floor, what else did you see?
Well, obviously I looked down, and from, I don't know, the marble tiles or the shrapnel, I'm not sure what, but I had a little graze on my toe. But I wasn't hurt or injured. I didn't need to seek medical treatment or any of that.
Were you bleeding?
I was scratched from the shrapnel. I don't know what from, but there was blood on my toe, yes.
And what did you do?
Well, from what I remember correctly, I went up to the bathroom to go get a tissue just to wipe it. I was in shock because I've never been in a confined area where a gunshot's gone off by accident, you know. Could have been a fatality. So for me, I was very shocked. I don't think it sunk in until 3-4 days after. Because when it happened, I was shocked, but it happened, you know. I didn't expect it. I didn't understand it.
Just shortly after that shot went off, who said what?
Well, the shot went off, and I do remember Oscar very clearly apologising, is everybody okay? Oscar, is everything okay? I apologise.
But while apologetic, Pistorius was keen to avoid any undue media attention.
What can you remember? What it is?
Well, don't quote me, Darren, but I remember he said, please take the blame for me. There's too much media hype around me. Just take the blame for me. And Darren Fresco, when the restaurant owners or manager came up, Darren took the blame.
Lorena says he didn't speak of the incident again until the morning of the 17th of February, 3 days after the shooting of Riva Steenkamp.
I don't know if Oscar did, I don't know if Darren did, but I never spoke about it again. The only reason I knew about this was after the 14th of February, I fought on the 16th. When I woke up the Sunday morning after my fight, I had over 100 missed calls on my cell phone from countries around the world, the newspapers here saying about the Tasha's incident. Basically what it was saying in the stories was Oscar had shot me in the leg. That's when I stood up for myself and I went back to the media to protect my career, and I said, that's nonsense because I wasn't shot.
Okay.
Over newspapers in the UK saying Oscar shoots his power. That wasn't true, so that's why I came forward and said, that's nonsense, I was not shot.
We can maybe come back for a short term before lunchtime.
Somewhat wrong-footed by being faced with a witness he hadn't been expecting so soon, Pistorius' lawyer sought an adjournment. Or was his tough stance shifting, now faced with a professional boxer?
I just need a little bit of time of discussion. On the other hand, I may ask Mr. Oldwich to do the cross-examination because I don't know if I want to cross-examine a boxer. That may not be good. I'm solely referring to the Tasha restaurant incident.
A short while later, back in the ring, Barry Roux was ready to put his client's position forward.
What Mr. Pistorius instructs me on, he says that if Mr. Fresco told him that the firearm was one up, he definitely did not hear it. He says it was a noisy restaurant. He wanted to look at the firearm because he was interested in buying a similar one, but he did not hear him saying that.
Well, I cannot confirm that. Maybe Mr. Pistorius can confirm that.
Yeah. But it was noisy.
Yes, it was.
My impression was that you too, when you gave evidence, that you were sort of unsure what exactly he said, Mr. Fresco said.
I was unsure of the noise levels, and with regards to what Mr. Fresco said, I was sitting next to him, my lady, so I do remember what Mr. Fresco said. Noise levels were loud, yes, they were.
But Mr. Pistorius was sitting further away from him.
Opposite me.
Yes, opposite you, but further away from Mr.
Fresco.
Before he was apologetic, he was angry with Mr. Fresco. And he confronted him, wanted to know, why did you give me a firearm with that was one up, so to speak, and one with a magazine on? He was upset. He confronted him about that.
I cannot confirm that. I can't remember that.
Do you say it's not so, or do you say you can't remember?
Well, I can't remember whether he was cross with him or not. I do remember clearly he was very, very surprised, very shocked and apologetic towards me. That I do remember.
He
Yes.
said that was a big concern that someone could get hurt.
He did ask me, is everybody okay?
Yeah. He asked him, can you understand what would happen if this gets out?
Well, my lady, as I said when I was up here previously, I said he did make sure, I don't remember him saying I'm concerned, but I do know that he said if it did get out, it would be like we don't want it to get out. So no one spoke about it. Well, no, most certainly I never.
Mr. Roux was then keen to make the point that while Pistorius wanted someone else to take the blame, it was in fact Fresco, the owner of the gun, who suggested a story that they would stand by.
It was then in that process of him apologizing, following him saying what would happen if it gets out, that Mr. Fresco said that he would say that the firearm went off, and he's not sure about this, but that it either hooked to his pants or dropped to the ground. It was something like that. That he would say that he...
My lady, you're
Fresco.
referring to Mr. Fresco now?
Yes.
Yes, well, like I said before, I can agree with him saying Oscar was very apologetic with regards to what was said to Mr. Fresco. I cannot say I remember because I didn't hear it, and I cannot say it's not true. But what I do remember is when Mr. Fresco spoke to the restaurant owners, he did say the gun was caught on my pants.
Following on from boxer Kevin Lorena, the owner of Tasha's restaurant briefly took to the witness box, but choosing not to be shown on camera. He confirmed it was indeed Darren Fresco who took the blame for the incident.
The restaurant was full.
And that would be how many people?
About 220 people. Okay. And I saw Oscar and Kevin Lorena and Darren Fresco and I think Mr. Rooney being seated inside the restaurant. I heard a loud bang, which I thought could have sounded like a gun, but I was hoping not. I thought maybe it was a balloon or something else. And I asked the guys, I said, guys, what happened here?
Yes.
And they all looked at me. And then I said, no, seriously, guys, what happened here? And Mr. Fresco said to me, sorry, Jason, my gun fell out my tracksuit pants.
Welcome back to court. Earlier this morning, one of the neighbours of Oscar Pistorius on the night of the killing was called back to the witness stand to continue his evidence. Charles Peter Johnson, his wife Michelle Berger, had earlier given evidence. Both claimed that they had heard screams of a woman and then gunshots, 4 gunshots in all on the night that Reva died. And at the beginning of his testimony, the state prosecutor highlighted that Mr. Johnson had received voicemail messages asking him, why are you lying about Oscar?
Your cellular phone number was read out in court yesterday.
During the morning session of the court proceedings, my phone started ringing incessantly.
There's one particular message. What did it say?
Why are you lying in court about, we know Oscar didn't kill Reva. It's not cool. Come on, man. Something of that nature. I can't remember exactly, but it was in a way intimidating. I've owned that telephone number for close to 15 years. All my personal and business contacts know me by that number. So I feel my privacy has been compromised severely.
Well, Barry Rue, Oscar Pistorius' defence counsel, is known for his bruising cross-examination, and he argued Mr. Johnson's account of the evening had become confused or a bit too similar to his wife's.
You just had a volley of shots. You had fought. I heard the woman screaming, and then the shots. So that's in her statement. That's in your statement. However, in her evidence, she said, and she used now explicit words, that she heard the screaming also during the shots. You have that?
Yes, I do.
You come to court yesterday and you testified now with explicit language that you don't have to infer from it that you heard the shots, the screams, also screams during the shots. Do you agree?
I agree. That is
Yes.
exactly what I heard.
When your wife came to give evidence, she said, I heard her voice fading away with the last scream. Significantly, when you gave evidence yesterday, the last scream, it faded moments after the shot. The fading. She spoke about the fading of the scream after the last shot, and you speak about the fading. How is that? It's about the exact same word. Not in your statements, only in her evidence. Fading. And then in your evidence, fading. But yet you would say all these remarkable points of similarity between your evidence not to be found in your statement and her statement, that we could ascribe to coincidence.
Milady, I don't think it's coincidence. She counts rhythms and numbers. She plays piano up to a quite advanced level, so instinctively she counts it. I don't pay attention to that detail. That's why I couldn't say there were exactly 4 shots. I estimated 5 or 6, I think.
Mr. Johnson, maybe I must stop you. You don't know what you're doing to yourself. Because that was solely in her evidence, what you've just said, and not in a statement. What you have just told the court is to confirm what I'm putting to you over and over. And here you come and you tender it. You did not discuss the matter, you said before the time. I asked you all the questions. And now she told you about counting, because of her musical background, the shots. That was in her evidence, not in her statement.
It's something we discussed, and we said we wonder why she would remember the exact number. And that's what our conclusion was.
You saw her after her evidence. And now you come without me asking you. You tendered an additional coincidence.
I can honestly tell you we did not discuss her evidence. I can give you my honest word.
You know, in my experience, I don't want to say it's applicable to you, but once witnesses start to introduce the word honestly, then I wonder about it, because right from the beginning it should have been honestly. You don't have to say it. What worries me, Mr. Johnson, let me explain something to you. This court is really entitled to something, and that is that witnesses come to court not contaminated, uncontaminated, give that independent version so that the court can listen to this witness and to the other one, because witnesses are not always reliable. Sometimes they're not lying, but there are many times a reliability issue. And the only way to satisfy yourself then about reliability is to maintain a strong independence in versions. You have not favored the court with that, Mr. Johnson, you and your wife. I'm sorry, I put it to you. You could just as well stood together in the witness box. That's what I put to you. What do you say to that?
I don't
Can't
agree
you
with
go
your
a
statement.
bit too far, Mr. Rowe?
Maybe I won't. It's for the court to decide, my lady. I won't take it to that point. I withdraw that.
Well, Barry Rue also questioned Mr. Johnson about whether he really heard gunshots or maybe something else.
You can say, as you sit there, those noises, I assume, did not come from someone taking a cricket bat and hitting a heart or a Maranti door. Or don't you know?
My lady, I'm certain that I heard gunshots. I'm familiar with the sound of gunshots.
That knowledge cements your belief to the extent that it becomes absolute concrete in your mind. You understand what I put to you? I'm not talking about lying and not lying. It cements your belief. It's concrete. Now you genuinely believe it. But there are two problems to your belief. And I'm trying in all fairness, it's a man's life at stake, and all fairness to say, let's look at other possibilities.
Well, it looks like Charles Johnson, the next-door neighbour witness, is going to be on the stand again tomorrow, resuming his evidence, and it's likely to be another tough encounter with that defence lawyer, Barry Rue. I'm joined by our defence lawyer, Llewellyn Lewis, and also by Alex Crawford, our correspondent who's been in the court. Good to see you both. Llewellyn, I guess one of the most significant things was probably the evidence of a friend of Oscar Pistorius called Kevin Lorena, and he told us about a strange incident in a restaurant in Johannesburg.
There was a discharge of a firearm that took place. At some stage, the allegation was made to shift the blame to one of the friends, indicating that for some reason Oscar don't want to take responsibility, and I think that was the gist of his evidence.
The state is making a very specific point here in, I guess, building a character of how they see Oscar Pistorius.
Exactly, and I mean ultimately it will boil down to his credibility, and the character of Oscar Pistorius will be very important for later evidence. So at this stage they are introducing this evidence to set the scene. Basically they will try to build on that, and obviously we will have to see how that develops. But character evidence obviously in this instance will be very important ultimately.
Alex, what struck you about what was said in court today?
Well, I think what many people outside South Africa will find really surprising is that people are wandering around with guns. They end up in public places like restaurants, and one goes off, and no one actually calls the police. The first time this came to light was a month later, after Reeva Steenkamp was killed. And it was only as we don't know how it got out, but there were a lot of people in that restaurant. There were more than 200 people, I think, was the evidence,
including a child at the next table.
Exactly. 2 days after Reeva Steenkamp was killed, Kevin Lorena was called up by, he said, hundreds of calls, many of them international, from reporters around the world asking about this incident in which he had, they believed, shot one of his friends. I think many people will find that absolutely staggering.
The other thing I think that was important today was the continued building of a timeline by the state. They want to prove a certain sequence of events on the fateful night, don't they?
Well, exactly, and I mean that's the reason why the state actually called the husband in support of the first fake witness's evidence, and ultimately wanting to corroborate that version. And then, as you can imagine, built on that, there was also the evidence of the next-door neighbour, also in support of that. Further corroboration for the first and ultimately the husband's evidence. So, to that extent, there's a sequence, and that's what the state wants to put up there. Now, what the defence is trying to do is obviously to try and search for kind of dislocate the sequence of events. And once they are secure in that, then they can come up with their defence and say, but listen, you're not sure, and therefore let's give the benefit of the doubt to Oscar Pistorius, and based on that, there is not a proof beyond reasonable doubt.
We don't seem to be cracking on at the pace people thought, Alex.
Well, there's a lot at stake at this trial. As Barry Rue, the defence lawyer, keeps on reminding people, this is a man's life which is at stake, and that's why he wants to go through it minute by minute and absolutely get it right. So at one stage today, they changed the order of the witnesses unexpectedly because they wanted more evidence to be brought forward, and that wasn't available at the time, so they put that witness to tomorrow. So the order of witnesses was different, and this kind of, I think, maybe slightly wrong-footed Mr. Rue, who wanted to take a bit more time to prepare himself. And, you know, if he was my lawyer and I was his client, I'd want him to take that extra time. At the end of this, if things go horribly wrong for Oscar Pistorius, he faces the rest of his life in jail.
Justice more important than the clock, I suspect, here. Thank you both very much indeed. Their thoughts on the end of day 3. Don't forget, you can watch the whole of this Oscar Pistorius trial on Sky News and see it online as well, and also on the iPad and the mobile phone app. And the special every night to help you catch up at 9:30 on Sky News.